Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're figuring out how the most effective organizations build their strategic plans completely from the ground up. Strategic planning, it often feels like this buzzword heavy chore, right? But today, we're going to look at it through a brilliantly clear lens. We're drawing on a fantastic analysis by John Pearson of a timeless classic, Peter Drucker's book on the 5 most important questions for leaders. So, if you want to know how effective organizations actually create plans that work, instead of plans that just, gather dust on a shelf, well, you're absolutely in the right place.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it instantly shatters our misinformed mantras about teamwork. I mean, we usually think that if everyone in the boardroom nods in agreement right away, boom, we have a winning strategy. But Peter Drucker, one of the greatest management thinkers ever, warns us that quick agreement isn't a win at all. It's actually a massive warning sign. Think about it. If everyone agrees immediately, it just means nobody has done the hard homework of digging into the details, challenging the assumptions, and asking the really tough questions. Real planning, it absolutely requires friction.
And this brings us to the ultimate villain of our explainer, the comfortable, unquestioning rut that organizations fall into. The source material perfectly dubs this the well-oiled machine of mediocrity. Just think about traditional taxi services before ride-sharing apps came along. They were a well-oiled machine, sure, but a totally mediocre one. When disruptive companies like Uber arrive, they force those traditional, unquestioning industries right out of their comfort zones. So to create an effective plan, your very first job is to ensure you aren't just lubricating a machine of mediocrity.
To avoid that mediocrity, we're going to use a step-by-step diagnostic funnel. First, escaping the mediocrity machine. Second, defining mission and customer. Third, discovering true customer value. Fourth, measuring meaningful results. And finally, crafting your strategic plan.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Escaping the Mediocrity Machine, with the foundational tool that will pull us out of the trap of doing things the way they've always been done. We are going to be navigating through Peter Drucker's 5 most important questions. Think of this as a timeless framework that acts as the ultimate do-it-yourself strategic planning tool. What's absolutely incredible about Drucker is how his insights remain astoundingly more relevant today than ever before. I mean, the guy was thinking like a visionary way before the modern digital age. These 5 questions, they're deceptively simple, but they demand rigorous honesty. They are the absolute prerequisites to any effective plan. Moving to Section 2, Defining Mission and Customer. Because before we can even think about building a plan, we have to interrogate the very foundation of our organization. Question 1 simply asks, what is our mission? Now, your mission isn't just some fancy plaque on the wall. It sets the strict boundaries for what you will do, and honestly, more importantly, what you will absolutely not do. If your plan doesn't directly serve the mission, it shouldn't be in the plan, period. Leadership guru Jim Collins captures this perfectly. He points out that just because something is a quote-unquote once-in-a-lifetime funding opportunity, well, that doesn't mean you should automatically take it. The availability of money or jumping into a flashy new market is merely a fact. It is not necessarily a reason to act. You absolutely cannot let money or a shiny new trend hijack your core purpose. Your strategic plan has to be anchored entirely in your mission, not in fleeting opportunities. Right, so once the mission is locked, we have to identify exactly who we are serving. Question 2, who is our customer? Now, acknowledging who the customer is might sound super easy, but it isn't always a simple, single answer. And look, if you don't know exactly who your plan is meant to serve, your plan is going to fail. To see how complex this actually gets, let's look at Philip Kotler's observation about a family buying a car. When a family buys a vehicle, who is the customer? Well, your customer might actually be 4 different people playing distinct roles. You've got the initiator who suggests the idea, the influencer who shapes the choice, the decider who makes the final call, and then the buyer who actually writes the check. Effective organizations map out all of these roles in their strategic plans. They don't just blindly target one generic customer. Section 3, Discovering True Customer Value. Because now that we know exactly who they are, we have to figure out what they actually care about. Question 3 asks, what does the customer value? Peter Drucker reminds us that this question is so incredibly complicated that it can only be answered by the customers themselves. We literally can't guess this in a boardroom. We have to remember Drucker's first rule. There are no irrational customers. So if a customer is behaving in a way that doesn't make sense to you, it's just because you don't understand their reality yet.
As Nadira Hira points out, you can't just stop at the first easy answer. I know, it's so tempting to believe we already know what our customers want, especially with all the modern data we have. But you must invest time and actively snoop to discover the real gold in your ideal customer's experience. You have to talk to them, live and in earnest. You've got to dig, frame, reframe, and interrogate until you uncover the deeper truths of what actually satisfies their needs, wants, and aspirations. Think about this through Raghu Krishnamurthy's hospital analogy. From a product mindset, the hospital is there to cure the disease you already have. But from the customer mindset, you go to the hospital to prevent diseases from happening in the first place. True value requires translating your perspective from the product you sell to the actual mindset of the customer. Your strategic plan has to be built around preventing the disease, so to speak, rather than just peddling the cure. On to Section 4, measuring meaningful results. Because with a clear understanding of value, we have to rigorously measure our progress before formulating our next moves. Question 4 asks, what are our results? It is vital to understand here that results aren't just about patting yourself on the back or throwing together a nice annual report. No, results actively dictate what becomes possible next. They are literal fuel for your future plans. Look at the massive jump on this chart for pencils of promise. Founder Adam Braun originally wrote in his journal that if they built 30 schools by the time he turned 30, he could die a happy man. But look at those numbers. They absolutely blew past that initial goal and opened more than 150. Now, did he want to die a happy man and just stop there? No way. He realized that achieving results just makes you realize how much more you want to do. As soon as something becomes possible, you instantly start thinking of what you can do next. That expanding horizon of possibility is exactly what should feed right into your ongoing strategic plan. Which brings us to Section 5, crafting your strategic plan. Okay, having established our mission, customer, value, and results, we have finally earned the right to focus on our primary goal for this explainer. Finally, we reach Question 5. What is our plan? Now listen closely here. An effective plan does not exist in a vacuum. You cannot start here. Your strategic plan is the natural, calculated output of those first 4 foundational questions. If you skip the mission, the customer, the value, or the results, well, your plan is just a wish list. To prevent it from becoming a mere wish list, your plan must contain 5 specific elements that Drucker outlined to keep it actionable and dynamic: abandonment, concentration, innovation, risk-taking, and analysis. An effective organization doesn't just create a to-do list. They actively build all 5 of these elements directly into their strategy. Let's pause on that first element, abandonment, because it is arguably the hardest part of planning. The abandonment test asks, if we were not committed to this program, system, or customer group today, would we go into it? If your honest answer to this question is no, your strategic plan must outline exactly how to get out, and get out fast. Effective planning is honestly just as much about deciding what to stop doing as it is about deciding what to start doing. Ultimately, an effective plan requires this constant, restless cycle of self-assessment. As Drucker says, leadership requires constant resharpening, constant refocusing, and never being really satisfied. Planning isn't just some one-and-done corporate retreat you do once a year. It is a continuous loop of asking these 5 questions to prevent a slide right back into that well-oiled machine of mediocrity. I am going to leave you with this stark, incredibly motivating thought to chew on from Philip Kotler. He notes that nobody inside your organization can guarantee your job. Only customers can guarantee your job. Just think about that for a second. So ask yourself, does your current strategic plan truly reflect, serve, and prioritize the only people who actually keep the lights on? If not, well, it might be time to start asking Drucker's 5 questions.